Only the second faculty member to speak in this capacity. He demanded that I make no introduction. So all I will say is today's meeting is all about that beach, about that beach, about that beach, Mr. Beach.
Thank you. The title of my speech today is School Character, 1,000 Interactions a Day. Well, my first memorable interaction from MCI came during my employment interview with Mr. Williams, who leads our recruitment section here at MCI. And after about the 5-minute obligatory talk about what my actual qualifications were to teach, we quickly began talking about motorcycles. And after about a minute of that, Mr. Williams offered to pick me and my dirt bike up and bring me to a local motocross track to spend my first day ever motocross riding at an official track, something I'd dreamed about. 3 days later, when he made good on his offer, picked me up and took me for a day of motocross riding, I thought, wow, this guy might be the nicest guy I've ever met. And then, 3 days later, when I met Mr. Williams again at Mr. Bertrand's annual dorm staff party at his house, he was very excited to talk to me about his brand new 1000cc Japanese sport bike he just bought. And about a minute into that conversation, he asked if I wanted to take him for a ride. Well, I said no, I couldn't take him for a ride. I already had a couple drinks. And then he says, well, I'll walk home tonight, and I'll leave my bike here at Mr. Bertrand's house. And then when you wake up tomorrow morning, I lived in Alumni at the time, you can come on over, take it for a spin, drop it off at my house tomorrow morning. Well, when I dropped off his bike at his house the next morning, I knew that he was probably the nicest guy I ever met. Well, I decided to give a Patterson Lecture today in hopes that I could express some of the gratitude I have for this community, for you folks, for the way you've treated me over the last 10 years. As I've said, the title of my speech is School Character, 1,000 Interactions Today, and mostly I'm going to be telling you some personal experiences I've had at the school. My thesis is that a school exists, most importantly, in the 1,000 interactions that take place every day on its campus. These interactions create memories for us, which then become stories, which as we tell them, become the shared reality that actually is MCI. For me, the memories and stories about MCI have been about kindness, learning, and humor. I'm going to tell you stories about each of these in turn. So my next story, like my first one, is about kindness. And it starts, one morning 8 years ago, I woke up in the middle of a divorce, feeling crappy and alone, you know, pity party for me. So I wake up, and I had recently gotten a call from a high school in Vermont where all my family and friends are from, and they offered me to come out and do an interview. And I wasn't excited to leave this community by any stretch, but because it didn't seem like I had any more family here in Maine, I thought it might be the logical move. Well, on the bright side, my soon-to-be ex-wife had recently bought me a brand new Suzuki GSXR 600. Easily one of the most high-performance racing street motorcycles available at the time, and I was riding it to school. On the downside, my gas light was blinking. Now, I had ridden from Unity, where I live, to MCI with a blinking gas light before, but this day it had been blinking for a little while, and I was nervous. Nonetheless, I made the first bad decision of that day and took my bike to school. Well, for the most part, the ride was the normal blurring of beautiful Maine scenery as I wove my way down the horseback on my way to MCI. And I started to feel confident, sure that I was going to make it to school despite my blinking gas light. And so I made the second dumb decision of the day. And that's as I blew by Patterson's, I took a look and I went, oh wow, look at gas, I can stop for gas here. And then I went, 85 octane, oh, sorry, that's not nearly good enough, and I sped down the road, 40 miles an hour. Now, about a mile later, my gas light started blinking twice as fast. And this was a feature I'd never seen before on my motorcycle. I knew at this point that I was going to run out of gas. Not only was I going to run out of gas, but I was probably going to have to walk a mile or two for help because I didn't even carry a cell phone, and I was going to be late for school, and some other teacher was going to have to take over my freshman history class with no preparation and no warning, and no offense to you folks up there, taking over freshman humanities history first thing in the morning with no plan and no warning was a burden I didn't want to put on any of my fellow faculty members. Well, My gas lasted until right before the bridge between Burnham and Pittsfield. I coasted about a quarter mile to a stop, pulled my bike over to the side of the road, started to walk, and commenced the pity party for myself again. And I thought, well, I really probably should take that interview, because then if I was smart enough to bother to carry a cell phone in the morning, I'd have somebody to call. And in my head, I started to explain why I was late to my department head, which essentially boiled down to my bike was too good for 85 octane. But then, lo and behold, within about 5 minutes, a beat-up pickup truck pulls over next to me on the side of the road. In it are 3 people. One I vaguely recognize. It turns out, I find out later, it's the Dion family, who I hadn't met yet. But they pull over, and they ask if I'd like a ride. I'm psyched, and so I get ready to jump in the bed of the truck. There's no room in the cab. But before I can, Paul and Ashley Dion, they're in Vickery or Warsaw at this point. They jump out, 3 nice clean backpacks in hand, huck them into the dirty bed of the truck, and they all squish together to make room for me. So, needless to say, as I climbed into the truck, I started to feel a little bit better. Well, I got to school, I got through my first class, but all the time I'm thinking about my gorgeous new bike parked on the side of the road, waiting for somebody to steal it. I think, wow, somebody could pick that up, they'd be 100 miles from here before I even knew it was gone. And I started to think of who could help me pick it up. Well, all my friends are teachers, they're teaching, so they can't help me. Well, then I think of Mr. Bertrand. Well, I don't know Mr. Bertrand very well at this point, but in the few interactions I've had with him, he struck me, like Mr. Williams, as being almost unreasonably kind. So in between first and second period, I jog over to the wellness office, and I see Mr. Bertrand and Coach Campbell relaxing in chairs. And I say, with no small amount of shame, looking at the ground, hey guys, I was wondering if you could help me with something. And I look up, and they're standing right in front of me next to each other. It was like they jumped out of their chairs to help. In the next hour, Coach Campbell, our Fiji basketball coach, went to Dysart's, bought a gas can, filled it up, came back to school. He and Mr. Bertrand jumped in their car, went out searching for my bike. Mr. Bertrand fills it up, drives it back to school for me. Now, when Mr. Bertrand handed me the keys to my motorcycle in the cafeteria that day, this is cheesy, right? But it's true. When he hands me the keys to my motorcycle, I decided in that moment, I'm going to stay here for another year. There's something special about this school. The image of them jumping out of their chairs simultaneously to help me out at a moment when I felt my lowest burned itself into my brain. It was like in that 5-minute interaction, they were telling me, this is what it means to be part of this community. And it was special. My next 2 stories are about learning, because of course, MCI is about learning. But not about learning in the traditional sense. It's about how a dorm student from China taught me an important lesson, and how the boss-off ballet here taught me an important lesson. My first story is about Wilbur Chu, the dorm student from China. And the story begins with Wilbur building a trebuchet in my backyard for his senior project. Now, I don't know if you know what a trebuchet is, but it's a massive medieval weapon of destruction meant to knock down castle walls. And the one Wilbur was building was at least 20 feet tall. Easily the most dangerous device I've ever had a hand in constructing, and I've built some doozies. And I can tell you several stories about how people were nearly maimed or killed in the construction of this device. But instead, I'll tell you how Wilbur taught me an important lesson about kindness and character. So, I'm coming home from coaching a tennis match. It's probably 7 o'clock at night. I had taught all day. It was a long day. I coached all day. We probably lost, right? And so I get home, and Wilbur's in the backyard working on the trebuchet, and he needs some help. So I get out of my coaching outfit, I throw on my shop clothes, and I go out back to help out Wilbur. While I'm explaining to Wilbur how to use the chop saw, he accidentally knocks his soda all down the front of my favorite sweatshirt. And I'm ashamed to say, I swore, took the sweatshirt off, put it on the ground, Wilbur apologized. I said, it's okay, don't worry, it's just a sweatshirt, right? Let's get the job done. So we finished the work that night. Wilbur went back to the dorm. I went back inside. And the next day, Wilbur shows up in my classroom at the end of the day. And I'm thinking, oh, he must need to go to the lumber yard again, or he must need to go to the hardware store again to get more tools for his massive weapon. And so I say, okay, Wilbur, what do you need? And Wilbur hands me a plastic bag. And I open up the plastic bag. In the bag's my sweatshirt, clean, washed. Wilbur had gone to my house after he went back to the dorms, retrieved my sweatshirt from the ground, brought it back, washed it for me, and delivered it. Now, I don't know exactly the nuances of the lesson that I was learning, but I knew that in that moment, Wilbur had become a teacher, I had become a student, and I was humble. My next story about learning is about the boss-off ballet. And how the boss-off ballet taught me to take one giant step outside my comfort zone here at MCI. So this begins my first couple days on campus, and I'm talking to Colonel Wiley. And Colonel Wiley's the founder of the Boss Off Ballet. And I'm talking to him about the military, because I used to teach at a military school. He's a colonel, seemed like a thing to talk about. But about 5 minutes into the conversation, Colonel Wiley is asking me if I want to come watch ballet practice. And I'm thinking, why would I want to come watch ballet practice? And he's telling me how beautiful our ballerinas are, and how high caliber our ballet instructors are, world-renowned in fact. So I say, okay, I'll go check it out. So I watched the ballet practice, and at the end of it, I'm like, yeah, you're right, this is gorgeous. Wow, this is an amazing level of professionalism here. And before I can leave, he says, well, if you really think the ballet is just spectacular, how would you like to dance in the parent scene of the upcoming Nutcracker? At this point, I realized that the entire interaction has been contrived by Colonel Wiley in advance to try to recruit me for the parent scene of the Nutcracker because they desperately need adult men. Now, I was really nervous about this, right, dancing in front of people, especially ballet dancing in front of people, as I'd only seen one practice at this point. But nonetheless, within a couple weeks, I found myself practicing with a ballet troupe. Now, the most intimidating thing about practicing with the Boss Off Ballet at this point was the creative genius and head coach behind Boss Off Ballet is Andre Bossov. And I don't know if you know this, but it seemed to me that ballet was nearly as Russian as football is American. And Andre Bossov was to Russian ballet what Tom Brady is to American football. And so it's kind of like Tom Brady's your high school football coach and walking into practice for the first day. So, needless to say, it's very intimidating, and he expects perfection and professionalism in every step out of everybody in his corps. So, it turns out my most important job in the ballet was not as a parent, but as a mouse. You see, the parents turn into these evil mice halfway through the first act. Nutcracker is actually a very dark ballet. And so, as a mouse, my most important job is to catch the foot of the Mouse King after he ascends a human mouse pyramid of other people and then steps off into space. And I learned this is going to be my job 30 seconds before the first time that I do it, because Andre Bossov, as a genius, coaches in stream of consciousness. So he says, I'm supposed to catch the foot. I ask how. He says, catch it like a football, like this. And I didn't tell him that I'm only good for catching a football about 50% of the time. So up walks the Rat King. And by the way, he's probably a 50 or 60-year-old male ballet dancer. He steps off into space. I reach up to grab his foot, and down he goes like a sack of potatoes. So at this point, the Rat King is injured, and Andre Bossov steps in to take over his role in the Nutcracker performances. And to put this back in the football analogy, this would be like if Tom Brady was the coach of your high school football team, and then during practice, your quarterback gets injured. So then Tom Brady somehow takes over the position of quarterback for the championship game. So needless to say, everybody on stage and everybody in the audience during those performances was electrified by the presence of Andre Bossov and the professionalism that he brought to the ballet. I've never felt like more a member of a team as I did during those performances. And the most memorable thing for me came at a moment at the end of the battle scene between us mice and these little kid soldiers who were fighting. Really, they're like this big, right? And Andre and Natalia beat into our heads through several practices and performances that it was not enough to act like mice, right? We weren't playing the roles of mice. We were the mice. And we were vicious, vile, evil mice, right? And so, my greatest memory is as this vicious, vile, evil mouse, we've just defeated the little kid soldiers in a battle, and one mouse has got this little boy soldier in his hands, and he's spinning around with him, right? And then all the rest of us evil mice are in a circle around him, kind of scampering evilly around. And then as the music reaches its crescendo, the mouse in the middle chucks this little kid out to me, right? I caught him this time, fortunately. And as I catch him, and I'm carrying him off stage, I'm really feeling like the evil, vile mouse. And so before I step off stage, I chomp into his neck with my mouse to just shake him around like that. And there's a little boy in the front row. And he screams so loud that the entire audience at the Waterville Opera House hears it. And I feel like I just got the game-winning goal in the championship game. And I'm walking off, I'm like, that just chomped your neck. The boy soldier. Gently put it down on the ground. So none of this would have happened if it wasn't for the members of the Bossoff Ballet community teaching me to take a giant step outside my comfort zone. My final story today is about humor, and about how the right humorous interaction can bond the character of school together in a palpable reality. Now, I have a lot of funny stories in my 10 years here at MCI, but perhaps the most memorable and funniest is the 2010, the class of 2010's championship-winning Winter Carnival basketball team. Now, the class of 2010 went undefeated in both Winter Carnival basketball and Winter Carnival tug-of-war. And it's just this 5-member team of Winter Carnival basketball, by the way. But they went undefeated in these two games, really for the same reason. And that's, we had some big boys in the class of 2010. And 5 of these big boys, led by the president of the class, Ben Glidden, older brother to Matt Glidden, led by the president of the class, adopted a name for themselves to sort of embrace their self-image in a humorous way for the whole rest of the class. I'm not going to tell you what name they used because I continually objected to it, but for today's purposes we'll call them the Big Boys. Every year, the entire school community during Winter Carnival basketball bonded around the Big Boys and whatever opponent they crushed that year. They never lost, and the greatest victory that they had was that year, 2010. And in 2010, their senior year, the Winter Carnival competition was close. Even though we were seniors, we really thought we might lose. And even in basketball, we'd lost a whole bunch of games. So it really seemed like it was all coming down to the Big Boys game. And the Big Boys were playing the freshmen. And you guys probably know at this point that in Winter Carnival basketball, the freshmen are oftentimes the team to beat. Right? Because their best players oftentimes don't play varsity, so they can play Winter Carnival basketball. And this year, the freshmen were particularly good. Probably not as good as the freshmen we have this year, because you guys have an excellent basketball team, fun to watch, by the way. But they were pretty good. And so, what made this interaction so exciting and so memorable wasn't even the great competition between the Big Boys and the freshmen. It was the particular uniform the Big Boys chose to wear, and this their swan song as Winter Carnival basketball players. It was again a uniform selection that was made against many objections, and it was made in secret. For the 2010 Winter Carnival basketball competition, the Big Boys chose as their uniform hula skirts and coconut bras. Now, you can only imagine the eruption from the audience as the Big Boys bound and bounced out of the locker room in coconut bras and hula skirts for the stiffest competition of Winter Carnival basketball. I don't think anybody in the entire audience simultaneously cheered and laughed at an athletic competition more than they did that night. Well, my greatest memory of this particular victory of the Big Boys basketball team came in one defensive rebound. And I don't know who the poor freshman was, I still feel bad for him. But he's standing here 6 years ago, sometime around today, and he leaps up for the rebound. And he's almost instantaneously enveloped by 2 of our best rebounding Big Boys. So he's going up for the ball. And here comes Big Boy Coconut Bra number 1. Oh! Sorry, Big Boy Coconut Bra number 2. Oh! Now, I don't know if you've ever seen the painting Edward Munch's The Scream, but to this day, that's what it reminds me of. Look it up if you don't know it. Well, needless to say, we got the ball, we got the points, and we won the game. It's probably also needless to say that because of these same events that I've just told you about, the hula skirt and coconut bra combination has forever been forbidden as a uniform for Winter Carnival competition. MCI for me has been a combination of so many joyful interactions that have become memories. For example, Mr. Neal's continuing series of creative renditions of MCI theme songs, like 80s heavy metal, doo-wop, Frank Sinatra, and techno, if you haven't listened to them, I strongly suggest you. Or standing around the Winter Carnival campfire this year with DJ Corson and Nate Tilton, and wondering aloud what Sigmund Freud might have to say about certain reoccurring shapes that seem to appear in every year's Winter Carnival snow sculptures. Or watching Errol Kurtz dance an entire solo from beginning to end in the Nutcracker live at the Waterville Opera House with no music because because of a technical failure, and the standing ovation that he achieved when it was done. Watching Joe Bowman years ago win Winter Carnival dodgeball after being outnumbered. He's a freshman, outnumbered 4-1 in the final seconds by the juniors. He came back and won. Watching Miranda Kiesper this year as a senior and a defender, scoring her first goal in field hockey. Or watching Ethan Inman, Michael Strom, and Jared Snow learn mechanics while working on ATVs, dirt bikes, and Mr. Foster's snowboard. Or watching Mr. Bugs after a spectacular near save in intramural ice hockey, lying flat on his back, singing out like a character from a Disney movie, while PJ Plummer nonchalantly catches the 50-pound steel frame goal that's about to crash down the top of it. Or listening to Bailey Huff, Alex Bertrand, Olivia Wright, and Emily McAlpine and Taylor Hall debate international politics in history class. Or picking up trash on the trail with my advisory group at Community Service Day last year and having Hannah Holzclaw spontaneously break into a game of Army Man while she used her stick machine gun expertly to defend us against the oncoming horde of enemy soldiers. Or in a single year celebrating a field hockey championship, a football championship, a drama championship, now a vocal jazz championship, and we haven't even started the spring season. Or being able to discuss the 1989 Tiananmen Square revolt with students from China, where it's been erased from their history, and students from America whose government helped those Chinese revolutionaries escape from China and then gave them full scholarships to Harvard for their efforts to overthrow their own government. Or being able to discuss America's war in Vietnam with a classroom of Vietnamese students and American students. Being able to discuss the American bombing of Kosovo with Serbians and Slovakians. Being able to discuss the Russian invasion of the Ukraine with Russian students and Ukrainian students. Being able to discuss Adolf Hitler with German students, Francisco Franco with Spanish students, and our favorite Kim Jong-un with Korean students. At MCI, perhaps more than any other time in our lives, we are surrounded by a close community of people who have common goals, but different backgrounds, different ideas, and different talents. And because of this, every day, through our interactions, we have the ability to shape the memories of dozens of classmates, friends, and colleagues. And these memories then become the reality of what MCI is. Each of us has the opportunity to be scholars and philosophers in classrooms, perhaps leaders on sports teams, maybe even stars in performances, or perhaps even visionaries in the arts. At some time in our high school career, each of us, in small but profound ways, has the ability to be heroes to other members of our close community. And in the stories I've detailed to you, members of this community, people in this room, have been heroic to me and shown me what I believe to be the true character of MCI through just a few of the 1,000 interactions a day that make up this school. And for that, I thank you for making being a member of this community such a meaningful experience.
Mr. Beach, thank you very much. It is obvious how much time and thought you put into that. That was extraordinary. You are receiving the traditional Patterson Lecture Series gift, but the amount is directly related to how far away from campus you live, so it's not quite as large as the one Christy got, but well done. Thank you again. Another
annual dorm staff party at his house. He was very excited to talk to me about his brand new 1000cc Japanese sport bike, Chicha Spot. And about a minute into that conversation, he asked if I wanted to take him for a ride. Well, I said no, I couldn't take him for a ride. I already had a couple drinks. And then he says, well, I'll walk home tonight, and I'll leave my bike here at Mr. Bertrand's house. And then when you wake up tomorrow morning, I lived in Alumni at the time, you can come on over, take it for a spin, drop it off at my house tomorrow morning. Well, when I dropped off his bike at his house the next morning, I knew that he was probably the nicest guy I ever met. Well, I decided to give a...
Only the second faculty member to speak in this capacity. He demanded that I make no introduction. So all I will say is today's meeting is all about that beach, about that beach, about that beach, Mr. Beach.
Thank you. The title of my speech today is School Character, 1,000 Interactions a Day. Well, my first memorable interaction from MCI came during my employment interview with Mr. Williams, who leads our recruitment section here at MCI. And after about the 5-minute obligatory talk about what my actual qualifications were to teach, we quickly began talking about motorcycles. And after about a minute of that, Mr. Williams offered to pick me and my dirt bike up and bring me to a local motocross track to spend my first day ever motocross riding at an official track, something I'd dreamed about. 3 days later, when he made good on his offer, picked me up and took me for a day of motocross riding, I thought, wow, this guy might be the nicest guy I've ever met. And then, 3 days later, when I met Mr. Williams again at Mr. Patterson Lecture today, in hopes that I could express some of the gratitude I have for this community, for you folks, for the way you've treated me over the last 10 years. As I've said, the title of my speech is School Character, 1,000 Interactions Today, and mostly I'm going to be telling you some personal experiences I've had at the school. My thesis is that a school exists, most importantly, in the 1,000 interactions that take place every day on its campus. These interactions create memories for us, which then become stories, which as we tell them, become the shared reality that actually is MCI. For me, the memories and stories about MCI have been about kindness, learning, and humor. I'm going to tell you stories about each of these in turn. So my next story, like my first one, is about kindness. And it starts, one morning 8 years ago, I woke up in the middle of a divorce, feeling crappy and alone, pity party for me. So I wake up, and I had recently gotten a call from a high school in Vermont where all my family and friends are from, and they offered me to come out and do an interview. And I wasn't excited to leave this community by any stretch, but because it didn't seem like I had any more family here in Maine, I thought it might be the logical move. Well, on the bright side, my soon